What is up, fellow sickos? It is part 2 of the mailbag with Morten Jensen from the NBA podcast and Yahoo Sports and Forbes and, of course, OnlyFans. Rolling through a bunch of questions now. Before we get started, Mort, any thoughts, comments, concerns, announcements, life achievement awards that you'd like to argue in favor of?
No. I just want to say I'm so grateful for the first question we got in the last mailbag, which turned out to be an entire fucking episode. That was great. Did not anticipate that. You and I were planning to just go completely nuts with a bunch of questions, and then we spoke an hour of one question, that's the longest answer I think I've ever given a mailbag question. So kudos to us for
Yeah, shout out to Nutter again, and thank you as always for everyone who sent in questions. As a reminder, if you're not already, Discord, best place to find those mailbag solicitations. I'll also throw them on Blue Sky if you're there, at MSJMBA for Mort, at Dan Favale for myself. Let us waste no more time, though, because we have many questions that we would like to get to. Let's, as we say, Mort, belly flop into this mailbag. So this first question, I'll start us off here, comes from Gregor MBV. What's your perspective on how Bud is handling the Suns right now? Playing Tyus Jones, even though he's terrible, not playing rookies and therefore putting their development on hold, playing both KD and Booker more than 40 minutes in so many games, even though there's no ambition left for this season. How much should he be taken accountable for what's going on in Phoenix? Mort, take it away.
I'm very upset at the notion of Tyus Jones being terrible. How dare you?
You claim that he can turn the Kings into title contenders, so I understand why you're
upset. Look, here's the thing. We all expected Bud to come in and turn everything around, and he didn't. I do think he's overplayed both Booker and Durant. That is completely fair criticism.
Over 39 minutes per game for Durant since February 1st, over 38 per game since Booker during that span.
That is a ridiculously high minutes amount for both. I think the not playing rookies part is super fair. Like Ryan Dunn, I want to get back to this because I was skeptical of him coming into the NBA because it felt like to me he was going to have to be, a small ball 4 and 5 because the 3-pointer wasn't really there whatsoever. The fact that I know he's only shooting 30% on the year, but like that shot was again non-existent in college. It was like so bad. It was one of those things where we questioned whether, he'd even hit a 3 over the first couple of years in the NBA. For him to actually turn into someone who can hit threes while giving you some rock solid defense. Yeah. All right. Like it's not, all defensive quite yet, but I do think he deserves the reps. And then you have Oso, obviously, who's one of the smartest dudes who just moves so well, who can play the 4, who can play the 5, is really a lob guy, but understands positioning so well. To not utilize those two guys more, especially when you're giving Book and KD that many minutes, yeah, that's problematic. Absolutely. So Bud needs to get some criticism here. Yeah, he deserves some criticism. I'm not against that. But in terms of how much should he be taken accountable, like I don't know how to answer that. Like, are we going off percentage? Like what's the criteria? How much? I don't know. 16. I don't know the answer.
He definitely feels more accountable than he should have been that we thought he would have been like 3 months ago, for sure. Right. You look at, the rookie's point from Gregor, I think is just the biggest one. You're like, these are guys that if they're not you can't say they're your entire future because Devin Booker's there, but you should get a look at them when you know this season's coming, because even if you make it to the play-in, you're not winning the title at this rate, and you're trading Kevin Durant after the season. I was listening to the Timeline podcast with Mike Vigil and Sam Cooper. Those guys are great. And they kind of posited that is Bud daring the organization to fire him before the end of the season. But because that's how egregious the rotations specifically have been. And I don't know, like the most trouble, I think they should be better on offense. Like they're 11th since February 1st. And it's okay, that's fine. But you have Kevin Durant and Devin Booker. And I know Bradley Beal's been injured. I think a bulk of the blame still needs to go up top. I don't know how good this defense is supposed to be when you look at the personnel. Even if you're playing Ryan Dunn, you're dead last in points allowed per possession over this February 1st span. Their transition defense, now, it's awful. I want to make that clear. How much of that is on Bud? Because it's like, oh, they're not back, even kind of back, after they miss a shot. So it does feel like a little bit of, okay, if it was certainly if he was playing Ryan Dunn and Oso Iguodala more, those are dudes that would get back quicker. Yep. And did he lose the locker room to any extent? We saw Kevin Durant compliment him in that one post-game interview following the tiff or the disagreement they had on the sidelines, where he mentioned all of Coach Bud's adjustments. But when you watch the Suns, when you look at the minutes distribution, it doesn't feel like he's making a ton of adjustments. And if you're saying that, because I think most of the blame needs to fall up top, but if you're saying that he needs like Brook Lopez or Kristaps Porzingis type center to make his defensive system work, that is an indictment of him more than like at that point, because those players are so few and far between. So I think he deserves a ton of blame here. If you're them, are you getting rid of him? Are you rolling through another coach at this point?
I mean, if you're rebuilding, like in the last episode, obviously we mentioned the Suns as a team that, probably should blow it up. If they blow it up, yeah, you probably need to go into a new situation with a new coach. But if you want to stick with it one more year, you're gonna need some level of sustainability up front in terms of the coach. It can't be a revolving door. It just can't. I don't think that is good for anyone, unless of course the guy you get in is someone who is like a czar of NBA coaching. Is that guy out there? Is that guy available? I don't think so. So stick with Bud for now, but be very aware that he's part of the problem right now, at least right now.
And I do think, though, if you're going to keep him, shouldn't you make every effort possible as part of the Kevin Durant trade or a subsequent move to put then a center in there that you believe actualizes what he wants to do defensively and believes that he can maximize the defense with? So it's not, now you have no excuses, but if you're going to keep Bud around, then you are kind of right. Well, let's build our defense in the image of how he likes to coach it.
Right. Yeah. No. I mean, you have to give him a chance to succeed, right? But also at the same time, when they made the Nick Richards trade, they got an upgrade and everyone was like, oh yeah, like problem solved. Now it turns out, no, you just found a very good backup center. Like he's clearly not the guy to helm. Like I've been very, very impressed with him. Don't get me wrong, but it's still Nick Richards. How are you going to go into next season and upgrade on the center spot? Like, yeah, we can almost ask people to go back and listen to the episode we did with the first question, because we brought up Rudy Gobert. Like, but do we really want to go that route? Do the Suns want to go that route? I don't know. I will say this: if you're still paying Isaiah Thomas to give you advice, then I have very little faith in virtually everything that they do.
Maybe Brook Lopez a free agent. Maybe they can get actual Brook Lopez at the minimum,
who's going to be about 71,000 years old at that point in time.
If you're getting him at the minimum, it'll be fine.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, that's true. I just don't think you're getting him at the minimum.
No, I was being facetious.
I know
you want to take us to our next question.
Question aimed at Mort. Who would you rather build around, Zion or LaMelo? And that's from Andreas. Yeah, I had a feeling that was good, because that is the point of topic on my Danish podcast a lot. I have a hard time seeing how you can effectively build around these two, or rather, you can build around LaMelo easier from like an X's and O perspective, but I don't know whether I trust LaMelo to be the guy to be built around. I know you disagree with that. That's totally fair, but I'm not there. I'm not there yet. As for Zion, there's the availability issue. There's also the fact that he might be the most difficult archetype ever to build around, which I also touched on in the last pod. I'm gonna say Zion, because I do at least trust that when he's healthy, he's productive in the right way. Whereas LaMelo, I'm not there yet. I'm still seeing a lot of empty calories.
The thing with Zion, and LaMelo hasn't necessarily been durable enough to just say, oh, Zion's too injury prone.
Right. Exactly.
But with Zion, if you have to build a team under the threat of your best player not always being available, wouldn't it be easier to build that said team around LaMelo than it would be Zion?
I don't think I understood that question. Could you reword it?
Because LaMelo, look, I think one of the problems with the Pelicans, and I don't actually know how much blame to assign to them for this because Zion has not been available enough to counter it, but they built their team as if we want him to be the central focus, but we need it to exist without him.
Yeah.
And if you have to approach it from the same perspective with LaMelo, it feels easier to do that. Where if you needed to move LaMelo to a secondary role,
all right,
he's going to scale down better than Zion.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's actually a very fair point. Like, unless you get like the absolute right teammate alongside Zion, which would have to be like Wemby or something, I do agree that you're right. You can scale down LaMelo. At least you hope to. LaMelo might not agree. That could be a problem. But like, yeah, theoretically, you could. That doesn't make it like that doesn't make it easier on me to go with LaMelo though, because his play as well is just it's all over the floor. Like it's all. Let's just go back and watch like his last 8 games, 30.8% from the field. 30.8, not 38, 30.8% from the field.
Who are the Hornets that have played the most time around him during that span?
I don't have the numbers on that, but I don't care. 30.8. Look, no. But what I'm saying is, even if you're supposed to be the best player on your team, even if you're playing with G Leaguers, 30.8% efficiency. And it's not just the lack of efficiency. It's the fact that I don't trust him in terms of his decision making. I don't trust him yet to do something over a sustained period of time where I can feel comfortable knowing that, oh yeah, he's got it. Like, if I'm a coach, if I'm a general manager, if I'm looking at a rough stretch in the season, I would have zero faith in in basically saying, okay, well, I have LaMelo, he'll carry me through this rough stretch. I have zero faith.
I think that's fair. It really comes down to you're betting on a higher peak from Zion. I think that you can bet on a more extended peak from LaMelo Ball if and when he gets there. And that might be sort of the two things that we're battling against in that situation. Your answer did not surprise me, though. On to the next question. This one comes from Freaky Unk. Asks, writing off a blockbuster Trae Young or LaMelo Ball deal, what moves could Orlando make to better the offense? Is there anything that moves the needle without getting an offensive superstar on the roster? They look so good fighting through injuries, but the offense looks untenable with this core.
I wrote about this. So yes, there is one guy who can not necessarily solve anything or everything, but he'll give you a boost. Kobe White. Like, because you won't have to break the bank to get him, is also financially speaking, because he's going to be at like 12.3 or 12.6 million next year. So like, just in terms of matching salary, that's not going to be an issue whatsoever. It's the Bulls, so you can probably get away with offering them, I don't know, 10 massages. I don't know, I don't know, like a dinner date. I don't know. You can probably get him for nothing. You can at least squeeze them because it's the Bulls. And like the last time the Magic dealt with Chicago, it went pretty well for Orlando. Let's just put it that way. So they would have incentive to go back to that well. But Kobe White is a guy who won't overpower you offensively. Like, he won't take the ball out of Paolo Banchero or Franz Wagner's hands too much, but he will be able to create off his own accord. He'll be able to spot off the attention given to those two. I think he's a pretty clean fit on that roster.
I would agree. I'm going to throw some more names at you again in the non-blockbuster tier. Fred VanVleet.
Very expensive. You know what? I'm actually going to disagree with you on this, because if there's one thing I would worry about with Fred as well, we know that this is a Magic team that's really struggled with this efficiency this year. Fred VanVleet is not an efficiency player. He's never been. Like, this is a guy who shoots in the high 30s, very low 40s frequently. I know the vast majority of his shots are threes. I get that. But even so, I would look at guys who are going to be efficiency players, and especially if they're attached to a $40 million price tag.
To be clear, I'm not advocating for these names. I'm just throwing them at you.
Yes, you are. You just did. Absolutely.
What about Malik Monk?
I don't. Yeah, like so he's gotten so much better as a playmaker, but is he a guy who you trust with the ball in his hands at a much higher extent? Like I don't hate the fit. Like the scoring fit, I actually like a great deal. I don't know if I trust the ball handling in that situation.
Anthony Simons has been a very popular one.
Yeah. Yeah, look, I mean, Zone Buster, right? Coming in, just playing off of everyone. He would what would he step into? Like 25 points per game on that roster? He would hit like 4 threes per game on average for the year.
That I mean, you do his shot attempts go down because defenses are like throwing 2 and 3 bodies at him and like trying to defend Paolo and Franz straight up at that point because they're worried about the 3. I don't know.
Guess we'll have to find out. He does seem like a guy who could end up there.
What about Colin Sexton?
Yeah. I mean, again, ball handling, playmaking, like responsibilities. I don't know if they go hand in hand. The scoring touch does. I mean, remember the knock on him coming into the league was that he couldn't shoot.
Yeah.
I think he's proven pretty well that that's not a problem. He'll do fine. Yeah, I don't hate that. Reasonable contract too. What he's on, like 18 million?
Yeah, and he'll be expiring. He feels pretty gettable and someone that they, would be more up their alley when you're looking at the opportunity cost. When I look at it, I want them to get someone who can hit like stretch the floor, hit shots off the dribble, but like actually manage the game. He's not going to manage the game a ton. And like, it's kind of the same thing with Fred VanVleet. I actually think he's improved as a passer, but it's kind of the same thing with Malik Monk. But I also think because you have Franz and Paolo, that you can get someone who's not necessarily a floor general type, and that can exponentially improve your offense. If this was like a year and a half ago, Terry Rozier might have been interesting.
Yeah.
Somewhat ironically, if they decided to blow it up, like Tyler Hero would be really interesting in Orlando. Maybe that's too blockbustery for this. He was just an all-star, so probably too blockbustery for this.
A little bit. And also, again, like I might be looking too much at playmakers instead of just scorers, but like Tyler would come in and give them what they needed in terms of the scoring.
Well, I think his playmaking is improved.
It has, but is he a guy who you trust to play like a pseudo point guard role?
On this team, I mean, like when Paolo and Franz are kind of you have these 2 other primary options. I think you could get away with that. I have a couple other names. I have one more trade candidate and then 2 free agents.
Right.
Lonzo Ball.
Yeah. Yes. Automatic. Yes.
You think because your Franz and Paolo kind of do the half court stuff and Lonzo Ball get you moving up and down the floor.
And he's 10 million for next year, which in NBA terms, when with the cap increases, he's basically free. So
yeah, I mean, you could just guarantee Gary Harris's deal, or it'd be easy to match the money for them.
He won't give you a scoring punch, though. That's the thing. He will give you the playmaking. He'll give you some spot up 3-point ability. That's fine. The volume scoring he won't give you, though. So like it would have to be Lonzo Ball and someone else.
Like a Malik Beasley's a free agent type deal. Like just it doesn't have to be another ball handler. So yeah. Although
fun. Malik Beasley's everything that KCP should have been for him.
The other thing though, so in the 7 games Lonzo's played since February 1st, he's shooting like 6 or 7 3-point attempts per game in under 27 minutes.
Oh yeah,
that's enough volume scoring, I think. Not from scratch, which I think is what you're getting at.
Right.
2 free agents. This one's not going to fit the scoring thing. Well, I guess it could, but not to a T. Ty Jerome.
Tyus Jones.
No. Tyus Jones would work. I just feel like, they need someone who's more of a scorer than Tyus Jones.
I hear you. Yeah.
What about Ty Jerome?
Yeah. Do we trust that what he does in Cleveland is something he can duplicate on a different team?
I mean, that's the bet you're making. I'd be intrigued at the very least after watching him this year.
No, I would too. Don't get me wrong.
He also fits because he's not. I wouldn't call him like a caps lock good defender, but he's so active with his hands that he's also someone that you could envision the Magic liking because they love guys who at least do something on defense.
And he's big as fuck though, as a one as well.
Yeah,
6'5". So Like defensively, even if he isn't, quote unquote, great on that end of the floor, his size alone will prevent guys from getting to their spots occasionally here and there.
Now, this player is wildly inconsistent, but would you take a flyer in free agency? So we're probably talking maybe mid-level money on D'Angelo Russell.
So what, the non-tax MLE?
So around 15 a year, let's say he would cost, and maybe it's a 1+, like maybe it's just a 2-year deal, short term.
Yeah. 1+1, where year 2 is a team
like
option.
2 years, 32 million, 2 years, and what, I don't know what the mid-level deal will be, like 2 years and 30 million, whatever it ends up being.
Yeah, that's short enough. Yeah, I'll do that. I won't like, it's not something I'm in love with, but yeah.
No, I think if they're just refusing to do a trade and they're going to have enough room under the tax, like to use the full non-taxpayer mid-level, I think it's at least like a somewhat interesting stopgap. And then if the numbers if it's short term, he becomes someone that you can use as a salary matcher in a trade if you ever decide to take a bigger swing. Any other names you'd like to nominate before we move on to the next question?
I already said Tyus Jones. That's all the names I need.
What is our next question, Mort?
What do the Thunder do with their Sixers first-round draft pick? Please note that OKC owns Philly's pick with top 6 protection, top 4 protection in 26-27. What do the Thunder do with their Sixers first-round pick? I use it, I guess.
So, it's like, are they don't necessarily have the roster spot just to continue adding in all of these guys.
Yeah.
But they're also not a team that I feel like if they're keeping the Sixers pick and it's like 7, if it's in the top 10, let's say, I have a tough time believing that they'll just trade it.
I actually just wrote a piece over at Yahoo about the Thunder's, like the core outside of the big 3, whether some names are, if you can pencil them in for the future. I split it up into like short-term future and long-term future. And the short-term future was like after Chet and Jalen like re-ups. Like that's the future, the immediate short term, and then the long term. There are a couple of guys who aren't sure to stick around. Like Isaiah Hartenstein might not be around down the line. Alex Caruso might have to get traded. So, and then you're looking at Kayson Wallace, for example. Is he going to be so good coming off his rookie deal that you're looking at paying him in the late 20s, early 30s? Because I know that he's having a bit of a down year this year offensively, but defensively, he's right there. He had a great rookie season in terms of offense as well. If he bridges that over the course of the next 2 years, and if he gets a bigger and bigger role and the numbers starts piling up, then you have a real conversation there in regards to should they stick with him. So I don't think the Thunder are done making draft picks. I know that I think they obviously know that they can save a shit ton of money just basically drafting guys, keeping them for 4 years on their rookie deals, and then when those deals are up, that's when they have to make some tough decisions. But it wouldn't surprise me if they basically look at each window in the coming years as, oh, hey, 4 years with a rookie, or not rookie, but like a rookie contract player earning what, like 40 to 50% less of what he should compared to like production. I think that's the route they're going. It's a great way to save money.
I would agree with you. Now you're going to get into the point. It's right. Are you going to start moving on from, I guess there are some players right now that you consider expendable, like maybe moving on from Ousmane Dieng's roster spot or big Jalen Williams, maybe even a Kendrick Williams. I did do because I have begun my draft prep. I have 3 names that based off the range that their Sixers pick would be in, and then just kind of trying to look at what the Thunder need or how they draft. Liam McNeely of UConn, to get like a 6'7" shooter in there who will really get him up.
Oh, was this the question about like who they should pick though? Because then I just misinterpreted the question.
I think it could be both. You could interpret it any way you want. I went both ways with it. I think my personal opinion is they will keep it if they have the Sixers pick.
Right.
But they're good enough where something arises in the playoffs and they say, oh, we need this. Then an opportunity bubbles to the surface over the offseason. It's not like a pick they should have bolted down. 2 other names I'd consider. Khan Knuppel of Duke, kind of getting another shooter type in there. I think like positionally on defense, they can probably, he needs to get stronger, or at least in better shape. Is going to have athletic limitations, but the Thunder, they're just built to insulate a bunch
Yep.
of different guys. And then the other one, and I can't tell if this is a spot on Thunder pick or if it's this guy might be too Julius Randle-ish for them, but Colin Murray Boyle of South Carolina, potentially a limited shooter, but if you kind of believe in the shooting and you view his defensive tweenerness, like, is he a big, is he a wing? If you view that as versatility and malleability rather than a limitation, that could be someone who's like sort of an interesting project for them. And he's shown that he can kind of put the ball on the deck too. So those are just 3 names early onset that if they were on the board, like 7 to 10, which it seems like that's
No
where.
Trey Johnson, though?
What's that?
No Trey Johnson?
Have not dug into Trey just
Okay.
yet.
No, so this is more of a neat thing for me because last summer, don't get me wrong, I didn't hate the Isaiah Hartenstein acquisition, but I did think they would go in a different direction. I thought they would go shooter because that's probably the one thing. If you can, like, I don't think the Thunder have a particular weakness, but if they had one, volume 3-point shooting would probably the one to like look at. Trey Johnson should definitely solve that. Like, he would be a guy I would be interested in.
Where is he projected to go?
Top 5 off Tankathon right now, though. But
I didn't even dig into anyone who's in the top 5 or 6 because Philly would be keeping that pick, but obviously that's not a hard and fast.
Yeah,
it's
really, he can drop down because he's not an all around guy. But I honestly think that might be an asset to the Thunder because how they chose Dylan Jones last year. Obviously, at Weaver State, huge all around
permanent sub Dylan Jones. Thank you very much.
But but he was so good and he was all around. But like those roles don't really like translate to the same extent of the NBA. I think a guy like Trey Jones will have like a straight line to minutes when he reaches the NBA because it's like, no, I don't really rebound a whole bunch. No, I don't really play make a whole lot. What I do is I get buckets and I shoot a shit ton from the outside. That to me just kind of makes sense for a Thunder team that could use a guy like that, especially if they end up pivoting off of like someone like Isaiah Joe, for example, who might down the line prove a little bit too expensive.
They can also not, I don't want to say they can, I mean, they can afford to be riskier, but Nikola Topic is going to be a rookie next year and they're very high on him. And so if you're going to try and integrate him or you're focused more on him, you can take a bigger swing with the Sixers pick and just know like we're going to bring them along slowly. So they can do all sorts of things. I think that they will keep it. And if I was drafting, I probably would look at someone who's either like you said it, like kind of the higher volume shooting. I don't think you're going to find someone who's maybe they need another shot creator, but we don't really know for sure. Just with, all right, Hartenstein might be more temporary, but between Chet and J-Dub and even Aaron Wiggins, they could be set there. Our next question, unless you have something to add.
Damn it. You beat me to it. Like I just, because here's the thing, just to wrap up the last one here. If we assume that Hartenstein is going to move on after his contract, would you actually consider going the route of a big man for the Thunder?
I mean, they could do whatever the hell they want. More as far as
no, I was thinking of Kaman Malau, especially like for the Duke Center.
Can he play next to Chet?
I would think so. Yes.
Then I'd consider it. I would love to know. Shocker. I'd love to know where that pick is going to end up because like, what if if they don't, I would argue they're definitely, I'll say this. I think they're more likely to trade it if they get it this year rather than next year. Because like next year there's looser protection. And now you've put enough, like Isaiah Hartenstein could technically be a free agent in 2026 because of that team option. So that'll be interesting to see if if you're the Thunder, would you prefer to get it this year or next year?
I probably would
this year because the Sixers are bad, right? So it's going to be in the top 10.
Also, this draft seems to be pretty solid. I do think there are some specific archetypes that would fit them pretty well.
Next question. This one comes from NBA Casual. Can anyone step up and make a strong rookie of the year case with sub 20 games to go? And I'm assuming we're just someone other than Stephon Castle or Jalen Wells, which they seem like the two that are featuring heavily the most. I have 3 names.
Oh, okay.
For your consideration.
Yep.
Zachary Risachet, number 1. He's been shooting the shit out of the ball, or shooting the hell out of the ball. He's not shooting like shit since he came back from injury.
Yep.
and he's been pretty good. He's gotten more minutes since the DeAndre Hunter trade, which I assume was part of that logic. I like him as an off-ball mover. I don't trust him one-on-one defensively, but I think he moves around defensively enough. And I do believe a lot of voters might gravitate towards, all right, minutes played. And so you're looking at the volume he's shouldering could end up mattering. This is someone, it's a put. Like, this is definitely a stretch, but he has come on. Kyle Filipowski is doing things in Utah, especially on the offensive end. Just like basically like putting the ball on the floor, better screener than I thought he'd be, and been able to finish at the basket a little bit better than I thought he was going to. And then, of course, the shooting. And finally, I think you can guess where this is going if you're watching on YouTube. If Donovan Clingan just had more minutes, he might be the rookie of the year. He's already one of the most impactful rim protectors in the game. Pretty good screener, definitely limited offensively. You worry about kind of the touch around the basket. But for the things that he's able to do just defensively for a Portland Trailblazers team, again, that is, I don't know if you would call them outright good, but they're contending for a play-in spot. I think if he had more minutes under his belt, he would be someone that would get more consideration.
Right. I only agree with one of those names, and that's Lisa Shea. That's it, basically. I don't think the rest have a chance in hell. And I even still don't really. I think this is all down to Castle. Honestly, I know Wells is a guy who's talked about, like Sam Vecini, a man I greatly respect in terms of his draft preparation, has Wells as his favorite rookie of the year pick. I'm not there. I think the offense is a little bit too streaky, a little bit too not just inefficient, because he's more efficient than Castle on the season, but at least Castle asserts himself in different ways, where I think Wells is a little bit more too reliant on who else is on the floor with him. So to me, it's a one-man race. I have Stephon Castle pretty comfortably ahead, honestly.
That seems way too dismissive of what Jalen Wells has done for the Grizzlies.
I didn't get into the defense, but like offensively speaking, right? But like defensively, he's rock solid, but so is Castle. I kind of think defensively, both of them are pretty equal in that regard. Hell, I might even give Castle the nod there. I'm not trying to be dismissive of Wells. I'm definitely not. I think what he's done over the course of this entire season has been tremendous. I just don't think he's got the consistency level, the volume behind him. I think Castle is carrying a larger responsibility when he's on the floor. So it's, again, love Jalen Wells. Huge get for the Grizzlies. Absolutely. Long-term starting wing. Don't have him close to Castle at this point.
There was Khalil Ware was the betting favorite at one point. Zach Edey is the advanced metrics love Edey more than I think probably anyone in the draft class right now. You don't think that by the way, I think it's going to be between Castle and Wells. I want to make that clear. I'm just trying to think of players that could like emerge because that third spot still feels pretty open. Like it looked like it was going to be a 3-player race at one point between McCain, Castle, and Wells. But now that McCain's out of the fold, you could just go in like a ton of different directions.
Well, wouldn't it be Richaché at 3?
I don't think he's a no-brainer 3. Like I do sometimes wonder if like recency bias it really impacts us here.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I do think when it comes to Rookie of the Year, that means we only have 1 year to evaluate. So yeah, we can definitely talk about recency bias, but we also have to include the games even late in the season if they're playing well. I mean, we can't ignore that. And if his efficiency, which you're absolutely right, is coming along nicely, that sort of matters. I also think defensively, he's a bit underrated. I think he's very mistake-free. I think if I would rank it, I would go Castle, Wells, Richaché, and then there'd probably be a pretty huge gap.
A huge gap between that feels like way too far for me with Richaché and others. I don't know if you're waiting, I guess, just like in terms of minutes played. I don't even know where he ranks in that now because I know he did miss some time, but he is he's no longer even, he's 7th in total minutes. But like he's going to play over 1,500 minutes, which some of these rookies might not. I just feel like if you're looking at like, I don't know, just like even Yves Missi, like just say that Zachary Richaché right now is worlds ahead of him.
Yeah, so again, it might be because of the restricted nature of, Misi is a rim running defensive minded center, where I think, that's obviously important. I'm not trying to diminish what he's done this year. He's been outstanding. But I do think being a multi-purpose wing comes with more areas of not expertise, sorry, responsibilities. And I think, especially in the second half of the season, Richard has kind of lived up to that. But again, like I'm just going to reiterate myself. I think the clear favorite here should be Stefan Castle.
Take us to our next question, sir.
Which non-Cavs Celtics team in the East is most likely to make it to the Eastern Conference Finals? And the guy who's asked the question is someone we just shouldn't acknowledge. Doesn't exist. What the hell?
Yeah. Who even is Brian Toporek? His
name is actually B Toporek. I don't even know if his name is Brian. That's a pretty big assumption on you. It could be bitch Toporek. We don't know.
I think my answer here is going to be unpopular. It probably should be the Knicks. I think it's the Pacers. I think that they have more lineup levers to pull in playoff series than either the Bucks or the Knicks at this point. Maybe Jalen Brunson missing time ends up being a boon just for what he looks like come the postseason. But I know Indy, there's definitely there's a very low floor on their defense, and it's probably the success of it is probably more matchup dependent. But the things that they can technically do with Siakam and Turner and Nembhard specifically, and now that Nesmith is back, I just feel like in a playoff series where you're going to have more time to study the other team, the fact that Indy has been, what are they, like league average in points allowed per possession since February 1st. And like they've kind of navigated this. It's an awkward stretch from what I've seen of them where they're racking up losses, but yet they're still picking up wins that maybe they shouldn't. So I think that just with the depth and the talent and the versatility of that team, I trust them to beat the Celtics or Cavs more than any of these other teams, which is all to say, I would be pretty shocked at this point if we don't have Cavs Celtics in the Eastern Conference Finals.
Right. I go back and forth on the Pacers and the Knicks, but you and I seem to be agreement that if there is a team out there, non-Cavs Celtics, it's between those two. I obviously trust the top tier talent of New York far more than I do the Pacers, but depth seems to be a recurring theme for these guys, the Pacers, and they have more of it. So that's a major boon. Now, would I feel far more comfortable with the Pacers if Tyrese Halliburton went back to playing like he did in the first half of the season last year? Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I still think I don't know if he's just saving himself for the playoffs, but when I watch him play now, there's a part of me that's just kind of waiting endlessly on him turning on the Jets and becoming, the version of we saw last year.
What is it that I'm just curious.
Yeah.
He's been playing like really well for a few months now overall.
He is playing well. It's the volume. It's the volume. Like last season, remember he was averaging 26 and 12 and he was like setting the tone. I think it led to a lot of other players on the roster kind of falling in line, in terms of the hierarchy to a point where it was good for them to have these more established roles. Like I do think now with Tyrese, he's a little bit too hesitant at times. He's a little bit too not reluctant to shoot. I don't want to say reluctant because he's not turning down open shots necessarily, but he's also not forcing the issue as much as he should once in a while, where I think there have been games where I've been wondering at the end of them, like, would they've had a better chance of actually pulling out a W if he'd been more assertive? So I am missing something a little bit more. Again, I hate this word, but aggressive. I'm missing some aggressiveness from him. I want to see him, at least crack 17 shots per game. Like, just get up on the volume. I think he's the best scorer the team has. I think he's the best player the team has. And I think they need to utilize it.
I think that's probably fair, but I do think a lot of the shot depression from him, there could be some hesitance caked in there. I feel like I don't see it as much now. Maybe I haven't seen enough of him. Would be more so just looking at the offensive ecosystem of those around him, like the guys who can eat up shots right now when you have a healthy Mathurin, Nembhard, Siakam. And the other thing too is sometimes they have to work so hard just to get him the ball and shots because of how keyed in defenses are on him.
Yeah.
But I think there might be
That fault's on Carlisle. They need to do it though, because I would rather have, and this is, I'm not trying to be harsh on Benedict Mathurin here, but I would rather relinquish like 2 or 3 shots per game from him and and like funnel that towards Hallie if I could. I understand your point though, that it is so tough for him to get the ball and actually be put in those places. But there's also that part of me that just goes, all right, tough shit. You're a max kind of guy. You have to do more.
Yeah, I think when he's starting possessions, like when he's bringing the ball up the court, yeah, there are probably just situations, a bunch of them where he could be more aggressive. I think that's fair to say. On the Knicks front, I mean, the Bucks, they have Giannis and Dame. I haven't seen that seen them hit like this consistent enough peak for me to believe in them. And with the Knicks, I know the stat going around is that they're third in points allowed per possession since Mitchell Robinson rejoined the lineup. They're also 25th in points scored per possession during that time. I know Jalen Brunson has missed some games. Cat missed a little bit of time there too. But those are all things to consider. I just don't. I ultimately feel like the Knicks' best lineup is still going to lack like either like something major where it's, did they wind up with a real number 2 scorer in a playoff series? If it's, do you trust Towns or Mikal Bridges to do that? Does the math work out in their favor? Are they taking enough threes? And then if that stuff works out, it almost feels like it has to come at the expense of the defense, which I don't know. Like, I don't know if Mitchell Robinson is the solve there for them, but I will say they belong in the discussion, but I think because of the personnel optionality that Indy has, I still tilt towards them a little bit.
Can I ask you a question about Anunoby?
Sure.
Do you think, given the contract that he's on, given what the Knicks relinquished to get him, everything of that nature, do you think you're getting enough out of him as currently constructed? Like defensively, I think he's there, but offensively, do you think you're getting enough out of him?
I think you're getting, for the most part, as much offensively out of OG Anunoby as you ever could have hoped to get. And by that, I mean, like, you don't want him doing more stuff off the dribble than he is right now, because sometimes it works out, but there's not like a ton of feel there. And so I think the bigger miss would be if we look back and say, are you getting enough offensively out of player X? It winds up being a Towns or Mikal Bridges situation. And like, Mikal hits a game winner against Portland the other night. And when he gets to like those sort of fading mid-rangers, like he can look really good, but there are also times where it feels like he's the number 5 option on the team. And that seems like the bigger problem.
Yeah. So to clarify, I don't want Anunoby to do more off the bounce. No, not at all. But I am wondering if there are sets or plays that could be implemented where the target is to get him more threes. Because I feel as though the Knicks are not a strong enough 3-point shooting team. And given that Josh Hart is, the weakest shooter in the starting 5, and Mikal is kind of all over the map this year with the 3 ball, you sort of need that third reliant shooter, because I trust Jalen, I trust Towns, obviously. And Anunoby is the guy who's like third in line there of someone who I want to see take more shots. Threes specifically.
Yeah, I guess I'm probably viewing it too much through the lens of, I think OG Anunoby is maybe the only player, aside from just knowing who Jalen Brunson is, that's held up their end of sort of the 3-point bargain. Like, he's at 6.1 attempts per game for the year, and he's actually ratcheted that up over the past month and a half to over 7. And Mikal Bridges, meanwhile, has dipped below 4. But I think, like, if you're looking at players to take more, I honestly think it needs to start with Towns or Bridges. And it's like, can Towns exchange some of those drives for just shooting those threes? Because look, getting downhill, like with Karl-Anthony Towns, like, I understand the appeal. I understand the appeal of Mikal getting to his spots, but the math a lot of the times doesn't feel like it's necessarily working out in New York's favor in some of these games. Next question is, Mort, from Andreas. If you were the Rockets, would you rather trade salary plus a young player and 2 first-round picks for Kevin Durant, or salary plus 1 to 2 young players and 3 to 4 first-round picks for Devin Booker?
Yeah, so we've talked about this before, just in terms of who, if anyone, the Rockets should go after. And like, I was always against like the Jimmy Butler, Kevin Durant's of the world, because I thought they were too old. I love what they've done in Houston. So Booker seems to be like the reasonable aged star that they go out and get who will still fit the timeline, who, you can relinquish some of the young guys and you can still, retain the vast majority of the core. Yeah, you'd have to give up the picks. I would go Booker because of the age thing.
I think it's Booker as well. And I've seen a lot of sort of this hypothetical floating around of, well, I'd rather like keep Jalen Green in my 3 to 4 first round picks than have Devin Booker. And there's a real discussion to be had there. But I do still think, despite what we've seen this season in Phoenix, where I don't believe that this is the best version of Devin Booker, to me, that's part of the appeal, is that this hasn't been the best version of Devin Booker, but he's not at an age where you should expect Devin Booker, the top 10 or 15 player, to have sort of dissipated from the discourse. Jalen Green is still just one of those players who are, Sam Vecini said this the other day on their pod, where it was like, he's the king of the last X Games split. That's Jalen Green. And like, that's true. I mean, maybe they get to the playoffs this year and he's just lights out and he's an absolute killer. But I think I lean the Devin Booker route because you're giving up more picks, but you're like significantly lengthening your window. Where with Kevin Durant, forget about the contract situation. How many years are you buying yourself? 2? Like guaranteed years? I mean, Kevin Durant's defied age and injury. Let me be clear, but that's just, I'm always going to pick, not always, but in this case, I'm definitely picking. I'm not a big, the timelines need to align guy necessarily when it's a team that's in the Rockets situation, but I'm going to go with the younger Booker in this instance. And also, I think he also provides more of what they need when you look at the half court playmaking.
Yeah.
You want to take us to our next question?
Is there any player in the league you guys believe can become a high-level role player / all-star if given more minutes? Take it away, sir.
I have 3.
Okay.
My all-star pick, to the surprise of no one, would be Reed Shepherd. I think if he had more minutes, I'm not saying he would have been an all-star this year. I think there's a chance if they let him work through growing pains, like we might be talking about him in the rookie of the year conversation or the top 3. So long-term, him for sure. So I tried to like journey off the, like, these are players that I really like. This next one's injured. He's been out since January 5th with, I think it's a toe injury. AJ Mitchell. That man can defend his ass off. He can get into the lane with the ball. He's excellent at moving away from the ball. And if you can trust him to kind of hit standstill threes, that's like a rotation player on a really good team. And do you know how we know this, Mort? He was in the rotation for the Oklahoma City Thunder. I know they were dealing with injuries, but that's absurd as a two-way player on the Oklahoma City Thunder. And my final one, he is pictured for those watching on YouTube. I'm a Bobby Klintman guy. We have not seen much of him this year, his rookie year with Detroit. I think he's shooting like sub 28% from 3 in the G League. I do trust that he will provide some stretch eventually. He can do, like, he moves really well defensively, and I think he could be disruptive, not just as just like being all over the place, but this is a dude that will block jump shots. And so I think that he can turn into a real NBA player. So those are like my 3 levels. Is Shepherd is the guy, if he gets more minutes, I think he's the star. AJ Mitchell's kind of the star role player guy. This would be, Bobby Klintman would be, I think that he can be an NBA player if he gets minutes.
He grew up about 20 kilometers from me. So yeah, I support it.
That's why I chose him, obviously.
Absolutely. No, that's interesting. Look, I don't have that upside for Klintman. I like him. But I hope you're right, because that would put Scandinavia more on the basketball map. So I don't hate it. I absolutely don't hate it.
Why don't you feel that way about him?
Well, first and foremost, I need more data before I'm there. Secondarily, he seems like a bit of a, I know we shouldn't use this word in 2025 in the NBA, because when we say tweener, that's almost a compliment nowadays. But I don't know whether his role is something that is going to be properly streamlined. I don't necessarily trust the jump shot yet. I hope that it comes along. He's also, what is he, like 21, 22, 21? Somewhere along.
I think he's 21.
21. Yeah. Like I'm not at that point where I'm ruling him out, but I don't think I have that upside yet.
He is 22, apparently. So excuse me on that. I'm just kind of like a sucker for someone who might have some passing feel too. And the tweener stuff is interesting because I kind of thought defensively, if he wasn't so, like, it looks like he's really good on the perimeter, but I wonder how he would handle against like more athletic wings and forwards. And then you get into the conversation of, oh, should he technically be a big, but what is he, 6'9"? So that's not really center material. So that's fair. But as someone who sticks on an NBA roster, that's who I'm going with. I don't think Detroit has a reason to give him more minutes, but I'd like to see him get more minutes.
So one of the names that I would have brought up, and it's it's interesting because he's starting to like prove it now, and that's Quentin Grimes. He's a guy who, ever since the start of the season for the Mavericks, I was like, yep, this guy's got another level. He's living up to that right now. So very happy to see that. That's a feather in my cap. Something that's not been a feather in my cap, and I'm sticking on this island. It's Trenton Watford. Damn it. Give me some more Trenton Watford minutes, Brooklyn Nets. Here's the thing, because now I'm going to actually take a page out of your book. He can grab and go. He can pass on the move. Like, there is something there. There's some on-ball juice that I think is interesting. He also does big man things. He rebounds. He scores inside. He also shoots from the outside, by the way. So that's like, it's not just big man things. I would be curious to see him in a bigger role or on a better team. I'm not saying he's going to be like an all-star, but I do think he could become a high-level role player. I think there's some juice there.
He's probably first team all eye test, and then the numbers almost never match up with it. Like, he's for sure that type of, because I'm with you. I like Trenton Watford too. I also will say he should not be in this discussion, and it's only his first year, so you shouldn't necessarily be selling stock. I will remain a believer in Cody Williams for at least the next year or two.
So I actually have one that's really, really sicko.
Is it more, you get more sicko than Bobby Klintman? That's the real.
Yeah, I think so. Marshawn Beauchamp. Is he even in the NBA right now?
Did the Clippers waive him? I can't remember.
I don't remember if he's even on a roster right now. I don't think Milwaukee gave him a fair shake. I think he's got an NBA ready body. I think he's got NBA athleticism.
He's on a 2-way for the Knicks. I actually might
right.
On that. Yeah,
I forgot about that. I don't think his jump shot is. I actually think his jumper is kind of pretty and symmetrical. I think there's something there. I would love to see him, but like, go to a team and get a substantial role. The problem or the challenge is he's what, 25 already?
24.
Okay, like, it's up there, right? So, but it's just, that's the same with Trenton Watford too. Like, 24, it's like you're on that age line where it's like, oh, it's getting dicey. It has to be within the next like 18 months. And if it doesn't shake out, that's all she wrote, right? So, but I actually am still a believer in Marshawn Beauchamp.
This is another name too that I considered. He gets some minutes, but his role has been so inconsistent. I think he can really help like an actually good basketball team. Vic Krejci is just like someone that I think should be, if he's on your team, give him the consistent, and he's getting that like on his most recent run, but like, give him the consistent 20 plus minutes per game. I think he sort of helps you. And I will say, the way that Eric Collins announces him, I'm inclined to just say Damian Ba in Charlotte. It's just like a name that I should believe in is becoming an NBA. Eric Collins. I need him to narrate my life, man. Just hypes me up no matter who he's talking about, and add some flavor to Charlotte Hornets basketball, which at this point is tough to do. Anybody else you'd like to nominate before we move on?
I think we're good.
Next up, who was the superior former Sixers mascot? Big Shot or Hip Hop? That comes from Velotis.
That Hip Hop. Come on. Of course it's Hip Hop. What are we doing here?
It's just, was Big Shot named after Chauncey Billups, head coach of the Detroit Pistons?
I don't know, but Big Shot is wearing a fucking diaper. I'm not with that. Hip hop was like the Allen Iverson era, baggy clothing, like leaned up against the identity of their superstar. It's hip hop, man. Absolutely.
I think aesthetically, I agree with you for sure.
I don't know why he's a bunny though, because he's hipping and hopping, sure, but like that's
he
not.
Also, he looks like. Have you seen any of like the Blink-182 cover albums that have the drug bunny on it? That's what hip hop looks like, except he's wearing sunglasses to me.
Look,
I would agree. That's it.
Hip hop is cleaning up in the clubs.
Most important question we've received so far. Thank you for that. But hello, what's this next question, Mort?
What's your issue with the Cade Cunningham most improved player case, Mort? Denmark is your future state. OnlyFans 69XOXO. That's great. That's a fantastic question. All right. My issue is not with Cade Cunningham in particular, because I love Cade Cunningham. My issue is that the most improved player award has become the next star award instead. Like Cade Cunningham averaged 22.7 points last year and 7.5 assists. I'm sorry. Like when you're averaging roughly 23 and 8, I just cannot in good conscience look at that as an MIP player the year after, because the MIP award used to be given to guys who kind of came out of nowhere. So I'm in favor of splitting the award. Like you can have your Ja Morant types and Cade Cunninghams and then just call it the next star award, but give me the most improved player award to like Christian Brown. Like on the NBA podcast, I had this thing with Brian for years where I had a criteria myself. I said no lottery picks and no second year guys. Like if a guy had been a lottery pick, no, this for me disqualified, with the notion, of course, that if Anthony Bennett suddenly comes back into the league and starts averaging 18 and 8, yeah, I'm gonna waive that rule for that year, because that's in the spirit of the award, where it's a surprise. It's something nice. It's something that came out of left field. Like I didn't know. Nobody knew that Christian Brown would be this efficient. Like, did you know that he'd be shooting in the mid 50s all year long? I didn't know. Like, did you know he'd be that consistent all year long? I didn't know. I think that is in the spirit of the award. So I have no issue with Cade Cunningham. I have the issue of the award being a, established star popularity contest.
My first instinct is to say that it feels like unfair to say that because you were a lottery pick, you can't be the most improved player in the NBA. But I've gone back and forth on the second year criteria, because I say you're supposed to make a huge jump from year 1 to year 2. You're kind of expounding upon that and applying it to the entire lottery. So I think it would make me a hypocrite to dismiss it. I think it's absolutely possible for bigger names to be the most improved players in the NBA. And I don't know that disqualifying people because they're supposed, year 1 to year 2 feels different, because it's not just, oh, you're supposed to get better. That's when you would make the mega leap. But how do you differentiate between, Christian Brown is a good example, because he's not working off this sort of non-existent or low baseline. Whereas a Ty Jerome, as an example, who's received some love here too. Yeah. Just compared to his former self, he's one of the most improved players in the NBA. How do you differentiate between opportunity and actual improvement for you then? And why does that differentiation then disqualify someone like Cade Cunningham? I'm not saying Cade Cunningham specifically this season, but someone who's in Cade Cunningham's spot where he's already an established name or was drafted with a high pick.
I hear you. So here's the thing. If you're given more minutes and you're given a bigger role, I don't think we can sit there and assume that the player was just as talented the year before, because we have to make the assumption that the player would probably have played otherwise if he'd been that good. Now, is that flawed logic because there are stupid coaches out there who won't play certain players? Absolutely. But we're not privy to that. We're not privy to what goes on in the locker room. We have no idea if Ty Jerome was actually ready to play at that level last year. We have no clue. The only thing we can go off is the data we're given year to year. So while I hear you on the, given more of an opportunity, more minutes, bigger role, we can't sit there and say, oh, this guy was just as good last year. We cannot say it if we didn't see it, because then we're just kind of guessing. I'm not saying that Cade isn't improved. I'm not saying that Ja Morant back in the day wasn't improved. But what I'm saying is that when you're giving these, when you want to give this award to guys who are a former rookie of the year, or, in Cade's case, top 3 rookie of the year voter, it's no, I'm sorry, but being drafted high comes with a certain level of expectation. If you also win the freaking rookie of the year, yeah, you're sort of solidified. again, we're going to assume you're going to get better in year 2, year 3, moving onwards. And there's just, you know what it is, Dan? I'm just going to boil it down to something else. And this is very unlike me because I'm a cold bastard. I'm a robot, but this is about feelings. This is about seeing a nice story as well. This is very much also narrative driven. And we can call it something else if we want to like stick the label with the most improved to Cade and Ja and those guys. Fine. But there needs to be an award that encapsulates the feeling of seeing someone take this dramatic leap that we can celebrate, that where we can say, oh, this guy sort of came out of nothing, or he sort of came out of left field. He defied expectations. Like Cade Cunningham right now is not defying expectations for me. He is realizing his potential as I figured he would, as did millions of other NBA fans. Christian Brown is a surprise. Ty Jerome is a surprise. Dyson Daniels is a surprise. Those guys, I feel, are far more deserving in the spirit of the award than guys who we already know are good and who will get plenty of awards or all-star games or whatever. So I feel like that award deserves to go to someone who isn't going to be handed medals and awards for years on end.
I think that makes some sense. It would be, and I'm always like defined criteria would be nice because then it makes it easier to pick from the pool of players. And right now it's sort of undefined. So when the year that Larry Markkinen won it, and it was between him and SGA, you were a Larry Markkinen guy then.
I was not. No, I mean, again, former lottery pick. He'd done pretty well for the Bulls before that. He had a year where he was averaging like 19 and 9. So I was very much against that. I thought that was ridiculous.
So you thought both him and SGA being involved in it was ridiculous.
So I have to remember the SGA year specifically. That was the year he came off of the 19-point year in OKC, right?
I believe so. I'll double check though.
Because at that point, again, he was a known commodity. I think all of us were like, oh, this dude is really good. This dude is like right up there. So again, it had to be, yeah.
I guess in that instance, though, what's interesting is this is someone who, so 2022, 2023 is the year I'm talking about, where he went from 24.5 points per game the year before and then was over 30. This is someone who went from being like an all-star or a fringe all-star to entering the MVP discussion.
Right. Then call it and make another award that's called the Next Star Award for that type of talent.
That would be fair. Like that would be, then you just have two separate winners. I think that would be, but as long as it's set up this way, I feel that it would be unfair to exclude those types of jumps, because I think you could make the case that going from what Christian Brown did, and maybe even the way you're looking at it, feels like you're rewarding their improvement year, like in net, where it's like you're looking at Christian Brown from when he was a rookie to now. So you're looking at most improved like during a span. Whereas
I'm going year to year, absolutely year to year for sure. Don't worry.
So year to year, let's say Christian Brown last year to this year, like that's a really tough leap to make, and he deserves most improved player consideration. But couldn't you argue that if you're already at such a high level, making the leap to that even higher, from all-star to MVP candidate, is the harder leap to make? So as it's defined now or set up now, shouldn't that then be considered? I know you're not for it, but like just given the lay of the land at this moment is where I'm coming.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I think for me, I'm kind of baking that in. You know, like Shea, for example, I think it's a good example of that. Like Shea was, since his rookie season, honestly, I for people who paid attention to the Clippers that year, and there weren't a lot of people who did so, it was pretty clear that this guy was an insane.
That Clippers team was fun. It was Tobias Harris, Danilo Gallinari, SGA.
I mean, a lot of people would disagree with you, but yes, for our sickos, it was fun. When he made it to OKC, even that first year when he was like at 19 points, that was with Schroeder and CP3, I believe, right? That was like the trio. It was pretty evident.
Yeah.
Wasn't
the
it?
Bubble trio. The bubble trio.
I think it was pretty evident that, all right, there's a future all-star here. Like pretty substantially, you know, a guy who would absolutely rise in the ranks. I understand your point of like going from all-star to MVP. I get that. But again, then it's another tier. It's a different case because it just becomes so elitist if we only look at it through that prism. Again, there has to be a place for role players to get some shine on the national scene in regards to awards. I don't give a flying fuck if you then call the most improved player like the next, like you if you hand that to the next star and then you give another moniker to like the Christian Brown, Dyson Daniels, Ty Jerome's of the world. I don't give a fuck. I just think those guys who come sort of out of left field deserve their shine. And I think right now the most improved player award is the best way to do that.
Who's your most improved player? Where do you land on the late career stuff? Like Norm Powell before he's going to be ineligible.
So it's interesting with Norm, right? Because he did something that we haven't seen before in terms of the volume. We have seen him be, very good before. Like he's had years of averaging 19 points per game, 18 and a half points per game. So we know that he's had the talent to be there before, but given his particular leap and the fact that he could remain so efficient, considering, that the Clippers weren't exactly expected to be a great offense, not that they're like, but you know what I mean. So I think he's certainly up there. My biggest gripe is when guys come back from injury. It's like where it should be like the comeback player of the year.
Which we should have. That would be a fun award too.
That would be a fun award. But that's fun. Like I don't want, like, remember when Grant Hill came back after a year off and he was getting MIP consideration? Like, what the fuck are we doing? Grant Hill, who was like a superstar, averaging 25 points per game in his last year in Detroit, like all NBA first team, like Michael Jordan heir before he went down with injuries. And you're like, oh, most improved player. What the fuck, man? That was the dumbest shit ever. You didn't get it, fortunately so. But that one I'm very much against. You should have a comeback player of the year award. That should basically be named the Grant Hill Award for what he did because those injuries were god awful. Yeah.
Would you shift your stance if it was something wholesale? And by this, I mean, I'm trying to think what would be a good example. Let's just say like next year, Zion wins Defensive Player of the Year. Doing something like that, do you think that fits? Like, oh, he's Zion Williamson, but he was never expected to be this, and he just became the best defensive player in the end. Like, how do you wait? That I'm just playing devil's advocate. I'm not actually.
It's fine. That's super interesting. Okay, I will say this: if Zion Williamson or someone of his ilk,
Trae Young makes all defense next year.
That's a better one because Zion has improved defensively.
And he has, in theory, the tools. Yeah. And Trae Young's gotten better defensively, but nowhere near all defense level. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So who's actually let's actually find the worst defender in the NBA. Like, who is that? Is that Trae Young?
Wow. I think you could probably like who's the most picked on defender in the NBA. Like, there's just pick a bad defender. I don't like the worst defender in the NBA. Such a subjective, like,
that's fair.
Whatever.
All right. Okay. But if Trae Young, this is ridiculous, but like if Trae Young comes back next year, wins Defensive Player of the Year, and he becomes the I don't even know how that's going to materialize.
So we could do this. Like it would be, but this is like that's a player who fits the bill. So I'll go by dunks in threes, defensive EPM of just like who's the big name that ranks the lowest. Because the worst defender by their metric is Corey Kispert, but he's someone who in theory could win Defensive Player of the Year by your criteria. There's not like a ton of big names.
You mean most improved player by my criteria?
Yeah. So I get so Jalen Green, he's the lowest, like of a big name.
There we go. Jalen Green. Yes. All right.
He's an all defense level defender next year.
No. If he wins Defensive Player of the Year, that's the criteria. If Jalen Green suddenly enters next year or comes in next year and he averages like 3 steals per game, a block, that's just the raw stats because you have to back that up. And his defensive influence is ridiculous. Like he's switching everything and he's just like hounding guys, understanding like, KYP fully. Like he's got this ESP on the basketball court. Yes. All right. I'll bend my fucking rules.
Okay.
Shifted.
I just wanted to know where the line was. We found it.
That's where we are. Like again, like that's where we are. That's where we are. Like it would have to be such a wild situation for me. Like, you know who I picked going into this year? Trenton Watford. And I have egg on my face, which is fair enough. But at least I'm sticking to the guys who I think is in the spirit of the award. And by the way, I was so fucking close on Christian Wood back in the day, who I called before the season. I also called Jalen Johnson before last season. So close. I've had a pretty good track record with these guys.
My most improved player has been a disaster ever since I picked Precious Achua coming in a few years ago. Fits the spirit of your award, though, had he actually improved, which he did not. Let's get to this next question. It comes from Andreas. Another kind of Pistons-focused one. 3 straight Detroit or Pistons ones. Should Detroit stay patient with their core, or should they trade for a genuine number 2 this offseason?
Are we sure they don't have a genuine number 2? We just haven't seen Jaden Ivey more than 30 games this year.
Well, I think that would fall under the patience umbrella.
Yeah, right. Yeah, sure, but like the word genuine implies that they don't have a number 2, right?
Yeah, I guess I don't know where to land on Jaden Ivey. I know a lot of Pistons fans think that you should kind of throw out his rookie year because of Monty Williams, and then now we're gonna have to throw out another year because of his injury. I just don't know where the line is on that. I would probably do something. So I want to make it clear, I'm not going all in to go get a number 2. Where we mentioned Zion as as a Detroit Pistons trade option, just throwing ideas around. I would probably try and, this is such a cop out, straddle that middle ground to where it's, can I get somebody who might fit the bill of a stopgap number 2 while we figure it out with whether it's Jaden Ivey or if you think it's Ron Holland or Asar Thompson for some reason. Like CJ McCollum would be a good example. Can you just get him for nothing but like outgoing money?
CJ. All right.
I'm just throwing a name out there where it's, you want, like, I mean, especially with, Malik Beasley and Tim Hardaway Jr. are free agents. They're both not going to be back. Getting someone who's better at creating off the dribble in theory, conceptually at least, CJ McCollum, like just doing something like that where it's, oh, I'll make a trade for someone who could be a stopgap number 2, but I'm not trading future first round picks to get
that makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah, I'd probably do that. Not CJ specifically, doesn't fit the timeline either. Too expensive too. Like I don't see the point really in getting a guy like that in there and taking away shots from guys who
he doesn't take away shots though, because he fits into larger ecosystems. We've seen that in New Orleans.
We'll take shots away from Jaden.
Why? If Jaden's the one operating on ball, or you're running, I guess if your concern is just, are they going to be inclined to run CJ independent of Cade more so than Jaden at that point or something? So I just don't view, especially this year in Detroit, I don't know how you could look at the players they've played and think that some of the veterans are going to infringe upon development. Would, I guess, just be my stance.
Well, I'm looking at guys. So first and foremost, Cade is putting up 20 shots per game. I'm assuming that we're going to see improvements also to Durant, to Ron Holland. Like there are also Thompson, for example. Like I'm going to assume that those guys are going to get big roles. Like if CJ comes in and is sort of like playing off of all those, sure. As long as it's not everyone else playing off of CJ, yeah, I'm cool with it.
I would say though, what the Pistons have done this year, I think it invites patience, because I think one of the worst things. What's that?
Most improved team.
Yeah, they are the most improved team, but I also think you see some teams get in this situation and they over-index on trying to win even more now, and progression is just not linear. So I would, if we had to pick, if this is binary of it has to be you trade for a number 2 or you wait. I'm without doing anything. I'm waiting without doing anything, because I think that in the long run, if it doesn't work out, is less damaging than the former.
Is that how we give Cade a most improved award, just by making a most improved team award?
Well, you should hold that thought, because there's actually a question on something like that coming up. What's our next question, Mort?
Any thoughts on Shaq's recent comments about the Pistons being boring and getting both their record and head coach wrong? Well, my thoughts would probably require that I hire a lawyer first. So,
it has to be tiresome. There's just no, I don't even know what normal fan. I'm just and I don't follow MLB or NFL or NHL closely enough to just be actually has to care about the people who are covering the sport actively hating the sport on these major platforms. This shouldn't even have to be a question. Honestly, if you thought it was a bit, But like, and even if it's a bit, it's tired. And
It's not.
so
Yeah.
my thoughts on it is that it's just not cool. I'm not saying they have to hero worship the game, but like actually cover it, actually watch it, know who's like, at least don't pretend to not know who the coach of the Pistons is, because it's just like, you're supposed to be an authority on this. And it's honestly, it's embarrassing. And it's just so, I don't know what it is about the NBA, and maybe it just is the coverage, but where fans have to sit through you and I talk about ratings and is the game covered properly enough, and does one of the broadcast partners or primary employees like of the studio show know who's coaching a team that they're supposed to be watching? Do they consider certain teams boring even though they're good? It should be embarrassing. And I don't know, I do view like the TNT, and even, I mean, I don't view ESPN as entertainment, but like when you're looking at the TNT guys, they are trying to enter. There's like a showmanship there that's on purpose, where sometimes it feels like they're in on the joke, but stuff like this, that's not like, if it ever was funny, it's not funny anymore. And if it's authentic to where you don't know, that doesn't have to know their exact record, but to not even like to think that Chauncey Billups is coaching them, like, my God, and to sit through the podcast of not just, forget about former players, even who are going to be conditioned to think their era was better, I'm sure, but like the current players who will like say things along those lines, or just like dismiss teams like OKC hasn't done it yet, or pretend to not know things, or just say, even if you think there's too many threes, to just go into it and say the 3-point shot has ruined the game, and use it as a blanket statement without providing like any additional like context or reasoning behind it. I just don't, I don't, is any other sports coverage or consumption like this? And I guess you and I are complicit in making it like this because we're responding to it. It's so wacky to me.
You just did the PG version of what I wanted to say, which is why I made the lawyer joke initially, because I cannot talk about this unless or rather without getting enraged. That's where I am. This is one of those things that just strikes me at the heart. I need to shut up because I can sense that rage building inside of me. You basically said everything that needed to be said. I should add my 2 cents because I'm going to say something that I'm going to regret. But just know that everything you just said, I'm fully in agreement.
The next question comes from Matty L. This is a run of 3 questions just for you. You're entering the pressure cooker.
Okay,
As
cool.
a current Bulls fan, name your all-time starting 5.
Well, I'm not a current Bulls fan.
Name your Bulls all-time starting 5.
Joakim Noah. Well, all right, we have to go. Yeah, so Joakim Noah for sure. Who's the 4? That's a good question.
Taj Gibson.
Those two had fantastic chemistry. Yeah, it's probably Dennis was in the later prime of the latter stages of his prime. I'm actually going to say Horace. I think
Patrick Williamson snubbed right now.
I know. Obviously, Scotty at the 3, Mike at the 2. I don't know. Derek, the spacing issues there are just going to be grotesque.
Lonzo Ball at the 1.
the 35 game version of Lonzo Ball that we got before his injury. Absolutely. No, I think at the point you need someone who's like a playmaker and who's like a shooter, but the Bulls just don't have shooters. Like, is it Kirk Heinrich?
I think all-time starting 5s, I feel like, are often built in the vein of not caring about fit, in which case Derrick Rose feels like,
if it's only talent, yeah, I gotta go Derek then, even though I have some reservations about that guy.
From Matty L, name your favorite Bulls front office of all time, Mort.
That's a tough one. I mean, Jerry Krause has to be the one because he ultimately helped build the championship teams. It's definitely not Garpax. It's definitely not AK. So, like, by default, Jerry Krause and his team.
Finally.
Oh my God, what are we doing here?
There's a different structure. There's different structures that you can try to get your championship. There are 2 or 3 star players and a lot of role players. or you can build it as
Oh.
9 or 10 very good players. I think now we're leaning towards having a lot of solid, good players, 9 or 10. My question is, how many of the current Bulls players would, if the statement was true, be a part of that team?
Oh, see now, okay, that's actually a very good question. That could be a podcast in and of itself. Obviously, he's alluding to what Arturas Karnisovas said, which was, can we just talk about that for a second? How dumb was that? How dumb was that?
Hold on, which thing that he said?
Oh, the 10 good players. You didn't see this after the trade deadline?
No, I did. I saw the thing about him not knowing which. Basically, we have the concepts of a plan. That was I saw that.
That was one of the things. So he kind of elaborated. What he said was that he actually thought you could win a championship with 9 or 10 very good players without them being stars necessarily. Like he basically described a lesser version of the 2004 Detroit Pistons as a means of we can win with 9 or 10 good players, which is obviously asinine because in recent history, show me a team that's won without a superstar, right? Like that's just not a thing. So that's the thing that Matty L is referencing, which is just egregious like management for and an egregious perspective from a manager. So 9 or 10 good players.
Well, we could reframe it to how many current Bulls players could be a part of the top 8 of a championship rotation.
Right.
Championship.
That's a good one. Kobe White, I guess, as a 6th man on a good team. I think that I would buy that, right?
Yeah, for sure. What about Io?
Top 8? He'd be 8.
Okay.
If anything. And that top 7 has to be slapping.
What about Lonzo?
I want like the 35 gamer a couple years ago, sure. The current version, nah.
Yeah, Maddie did say current. Okay, what? All right, this might be a tough one. What about Julian Phillips?
I actually like Julian Phillips. He surprised me a little bit this year, but no, not current Julian Phillips. Julian Phillips in like 3 years, maybe we have a conversation.
So you're not prepared. So like Vooch or Herter, like you're only prepared to guarantee that Kobe White could be a top 8 player.
Absolutely.
I might throw Io in there, but I'm like kind of smitten by Io, so I recognize.
No, like I said, I would be 8th, but like distant 8th, right? Like the guy you bring in after you have gone tips on everyone and playing like your top 7 guys 30 plus minutes, then
well, I mean, I guess the way but this might be unfair because Cleveland's like the pinnacle of depth, but it's like if Io was on the Cavaliers, would he play?
That's a good question. Would he? I don't know.
He would for sure play in Boston. OKC found a way to give AJ Mitchell minutes. He'd probably play in OKC. So
yeah, he'd play. Yeah, you're right. He'd play in Boston. I don't know what the hell's up with.
He would, honestly, to be fair, Io would play on the Nuggets. He'd play on the Knicks. He'd play on the Bucks. So like if you go through the second tier of contenders, like he would.
That's fair. All right, let's Kobe White and Io. Those are probably the 2 ones that I'd.
So if we gave you the over under of 2.5, you'd take the under.
I would, yes.
All right.
Notice, however, by the way, that Josh Giddey did not feature.
I just don't. I mean, to be fair, he played like some of his better basketball of his career, but I think Thunder fans have recently. I mean, I think Thunder fans have to be watching that, like Bulls fans or Bulls media talking about it, and sort of like, oh, first time. Like, let's just see that. Good for look, he's peaking at the right time for his next contract. So I mean, kudos to his wallet, I guess.
I guess, yes.
All right, Mort. This one, you could read it.
I feel like it'd be fun to award more team level stuff in the regular season, like best O, D, stocks, most improved, etc. Not that it stand for much in real life, just a curiosity magnet for folks to want to learn about how cool shit it is. Growth, chain drivers, tactics, cores, gelling or blossoming together. Fans to take pride in something, anything besides the title. From Think Shank.
That was when you were talking about most improved team award. This is the question I was alluding to.
I wouldn't hate that. Like I generally more awards, especially team oriented awards. I love that. Like if we also apply it to like coaching staffs and managerial teams, like instead of executive of the year or coach of the year, coaching staff of the year or maybe not even replace it, just add to it, or managerial team of the year, like front office of the year.
That's front office of the year. That should be executive of the year. If you're only looking at it as like a one person thing, I'm not saying you do, but that's not a one person thing.
It's not.
So I like the idea of most improved team. But even if you did that or most surprising team, like pleasantly surprising team, it'd be funny if they had a most disappointing team award. That'd be really funny.
I would love that. I would
But
love that. We should call it the Phoenix Suns Award. Yes.
my one concern, and it's not so much a concern, I just wonder if we had a most surprising or most improved team, what do you think would be the correlation between that team and then coach of the year? Because doesn't it feel like a lot of the times, like coach of the year goes to that team?
It does. Yes, that's a very good point. Like we'd have to differentiate somehow.
Yeah, so I don't like, but I would be all for like some type of a team where I think most improved team is kind of the easiest way to go. Best offense and defense kind of feels. I know we have scoring title and stuff, but that feels just a little too easy. Where it's okay, this team was first in offensive rating; they had the best
Stocks,
offense.
that's just super specific. Like the best team in stocks. Just that's a sicko award for sure. I'm not sure the broader public would even understand it. Stock? What? The best stock team of the year? What the fuck?
Maybe like the most aggressive defense award or something.
Yeah.
Where it's like it's a subset of a larger category, like the best shooting team, and then like the most aggressive defensive team or something. I don't know.
I'm honestly I'm all for it. And here's the thing: we talk about wanting to add these awards. I fucking forget who wins the day after. So it's like it's not even something that I'm like remembering, but I just think it'd be fun in the moment.
It's hashtag content for in the moment. Yeah, I'm with you on that one. Our next question. Oh, it's a super important one from Lucas Kaplan. What's the best cheesecake topping?
Oh,
I will let you know. There's a backstory here. I have a friend, and she owns a dessert shop near me, and she doesn't have cheesecakes on her menu. And I won't even name drop the store on this podcast in case people try to order stuff and she gets mad at me because she has like a pretty big social media following. She makes me custom cheesecakes. Like I come up with flavors and she'll make me custom cheesecakes. The best one I've ever had is she makes me a cinnamon bun cheesecake that is so good. So I would say that like cinnamon bun filling as a topping, or she's also made me cookie dough cheesecake, and then she'll put cookie dough balls on top of the cheesecake in addition to like baking in or infusing it with cookie dough.
So what's the what do you call the crumble? Like what is that? Is that from like crackers, or is it like sponge cake? Like what's the bottom?
The bottom of which one? Like any of the cakes will vary.
Like, what does she use as base for the cheesecake? Does she use like crumble or like cracker crumbles or like sponge cake or like what does she use?
For the crust, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, crust. I think that's the
word. Like crumbs, like or like the like graham cracker type stuff, or sometimes it's Oreos are like the crust.
Yeah. Oh, nice.
So it's like a cookie crust would be the best. I think is the best way. I'm not a like a dessert tier, like a dessert expert. I just know what I like to eat. So
my wife is a big cheesecake aficionado as well, and she like if I buy one ever that's like pre-made, she's just like, I'm not gonna eat any of that. Fuck that. Like she wants to make her own, and she came up with because look, the one you just presented it sounds delicious. Sounds a little too sweet for my taste. Like I love something. Again, I'm Scandinavian. We eat licorices and all that. Like we like something that's not like too like sweet on sweet.
No, yeah, I want my desserts because I don't have desserts often. I want my desserts to be on PEDs.
Right, and that's totally fair. So my wife made one with like I don't even know what you call it in English. It's not a gel, but it's like a mango. I'm gonna call it gel, even though it's not, but like a mango gel on top. And
like a jelly. Is that what you're
not even a jelly? Is I'm kind of like I don't like I've never spoken about pastries to this extent in English, so I don't have the words for it. Like I just flat out don't know. But that was delicious. And it wasn't like she didn't use like store-bought mango puree or like she bought mango, she did the whole things herself. Like she's really good at making cakes. I've shown this on social media as well. She's made like like cars, like cake, out of cake and whatnot to our kids and whatnot. She's great. That's the best cheesecake I've ever had. Like that, the mango thing where she added just the right amount of like lemon juice for like the savory, little bit. What do you call that? Like the no, sourness of it, and then just the right amount of sugar to balance it. And it was great. It was great. Like that was to me is the best cheesecake topping. Like if you do the mango thing right.
To each their own, but get fruit all the way for my dessert.
Really?
I'm just not. I'm like not. Again, I guess because I don't have it enough of, so I really want to feel like I'm doing something wrong.
Right.
Maybe it's that like mentally is what it is. I will also say perhaps the most underrated topping
Mhm.
is cookie butter, like a cookie butter frosting and like covering around the cheesecake she's made me before. It's to die for.
Okay.
Again, it's decadent as hell, but it's to die for. And I'll nominate. You have to do this yourself. Is you put the entire cheesecake, throw it in a bowl.
Right.
Then go get chocolate chip cookies, heat them up, and throw them onto the cheesecake, and that's the best. That's another good cheesecake topping.
God damn, that's diabetes in a cake. Okay, cool.
Yes, but if you only do it once in a while,
Yeah.
it's diabetes in a cup, but less often.
Yeah, no, for sure. I I mean, look, that is fine. I fuck with that. Like, I will say with the fruit thing, to each of their own, for sure. If I get, like, a a fruit-based dessert, which could be, like, a bunch of different fruits cut up and then with a little bit of whipped cream on it, and where the fruit combination makes sense, that to me is better than cake, ice cream, cookies, chocolate, whatever. Like, that
I
give me something that's fruit-based, and I'm there, man.
You know what I think it is? I've never been like a big I like watermelon, I like grapes. I've never been like a big fruit person. Like I'm not a strawberries guy or a cherries guy. I've had good I had they were these like cupcake cheesecakes. So they were just cheesecakes, mini cheesecakes, and they were blueberry and strawberry, and I think there might have been like some blackberry, and they were good. But I fuck with vegetables before fruit, and like you're not gonna find vegetables in dessert. At
No,
least
no,
I
no.
don't see.
Yeah, you have that for dinner, though. That's the thing, right? You have all the veggies for dinner, and then you've done your job there, and then it's off to the fruit.
In theory, yes, but the reason I take greens, which I know is a supplement and doesn't substitute, but it has like servings of fruit and vegetables in it. I'm so bad, like I have to remember to have like if it's broccoli or green beans or lettuce or something, like I prefer like actual greens vegetables. I'm just not good about like cooking them myself. So, but I've never been a big fruit person, and that might be why I'm not like a fruit on dessert person.
In terms of veggies, by the way, this is not we've gone completely off.
People are gonna be mad. They don't want small talk on podcasts because we're
Right,
not
right.
humans,
Yeah,
apparently.
that's true. Josh Epperly, thank you for just putting us on blast like that. Thank you, sir.
No, we don't
No,
have 15 to 20 minutes of small talk. It's like
right.
5. And I timestamp it. So, you're welcome.
People should know we're actually friends with Josh, so this is friendly fire. But like, yeah, I can't. I'm just gonna ignore what he said about that. Can I ask you a question about broccoli though? Because here's the thing: there's a lot of people. There's a lot. There are a lot of people that hate on broccoli. To me, that's one of the most delicious veggies out there.
It's honestly, and you know what?
It's
It's one of the we talk about scalability. Let's bring it back. We talk about
right.
scalability with NBA players.
Yeah,
Broccoli scales to all like if I like carrots, I like them cold, I don't like them warm. Like I'll eat raw broccoli, I'll eat steamed broccoli, I'll eat like pan fried broccoli, I'll eat broccoli with stuff on it, I'll eat it plain. Broccoli, I I fuck with broccoli for sure.
I can't do the raw. I can't do that.
Oh,
That's
really?
yeah. I don't know what it is. That's too big of a crunch. Like
Oh, I
I
love crunch. So, like, even with green beans, I'll eat, like, cold green beans work for me too.
oh nice. Yeah. I mean, look, I can do the crunch if they've been in the oven because it's a different crunch. They've kind of been softened by the heat as well a little bit, but like it's still got a little bit of a crunch to it. Like that's cool.
Yeah.
Especially with paprika and like freshly churned pepper as well. Like that's then it's good.
Now that I think about it, I'm actually not big on, like, warm vegetables overall, but, like, string beans, green beans, whatever you call them, plus, like, broccoli, like, those I'll eat
Yeah.
warm or cold. For the most part, though, I prefer, like, the celery, cucumbers, cold carrots type deal. Like, I don't like my veggies cooked.
I was the same way until actually recently because I started putting like carrots in the oven and started spicing them up with like chili, and I'm forgetting what it was. Lemon pepper. And that was lovely. And then, of course, olive oil on top, right? To give it a little bit of a
And
char.
butter and some Crisco and
No. Just a little bit of olive oil. That's it. That's not unhealthy. What I'm staying away from salt. I'm trying to put everything on, veggies that's not salt, like a lot of spice. That to me is like veggies and good, like, what do you call it? Not condiments. What do you call it? Like
condiments, dressings, that stuff.
that's dressing. Yeah, that's not what it is. Like
Seasoning?
seasoning, spices. Yeah.
I will say, before we get out of here, there is relatability with the cheesecake in the NBA. There was apparently a big story. I didn't read it, but when I was looking around, like for a picture to use on this part of the podcast, apparently NBA players as of 2018-19 loved the Cheesecake Factory. I don't know why. So if you read that piece, let us know why.
Yeah. I do know that NBA guys also love Chipotle and were willing to live with diarrhea.
Well, that can go hand in hand with some of your food choices. So
no, I'm just saying that's like that has to be good. Like I have occasionally visited Chipotle myself. I've never experienced that part of it, but like to imagine having that type of experience as an NBA player and just deciding, fuck it, it's worth it. Let's go back.
See, I didn't see the diarrhea thing, but like Chipotle and even like what's like the other big one? I'm forgetting. Chipotle. What's the other big Mexican chain here? Not Cabo Fresh. What was that?
Taco Bell?
No, not Taco Bell.
I hope not.
Like Moe's. I don't know how national that, but when you go to the Mexican cuisine, it is easier to eat, cleaner if you're not going to douse it. Now, if you get like all the toppings and it's like, well, douse this in queso but like for some people, it might just be simple, like, oh, veggies, meat, rice, move on. That's why I think so many people do love like the Chipotle type stuff.
Yeah, we make it our own. Because we don't have a Chipotle here in Denmark. And I actually reached out to them at one point, and they gave me an answer where he said we'd look into it because Denmark is like a huge Mexican eating place. Like
do they franchise? You should open one yourself.
Yes, right. That would be. I don't have time, Dan. I'm running my OnlyFans.
So it could be the OnlyFans of you franchising Chipotle.
Yes, dear Chipotle, I have an interesting idea.
Shout out to anyone who made it through this entire question. Mort, are you able to tell our listeners, subscribers, watchers where they can find you and all your fantastic work?
Yes, I do. And before I do, though, because we just talked about food, if you go to HelloFresh.com and actually use my promo code BUSSER50, it's a different code word now. You get a bunch of percentages off your first, and I even think like not just your first, but like second and third purchases as well. So go in and get like a meal box. It'll be sent right to your door, so you don't have to go grocery shopping. I have 2 kids. It's been so nice for me to just get that box delivered so I can just make food right off the bat. Busser50 is the promo code. And you can find my work, to answer your question, sir, on Blue Sky at MSJ NBA, where I share all of my links to Yahoo Sports, to Forbes, to my podcast on the NBA podcast, as well as my Danish one, Buzzer Beater, if you're, of course, speaking Danish.
Until next time, and as always, shout out to Frank Ntilikina.